Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order our November 16th, 2023 Bedford Board of Education work session. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Boynton. Mr. Akins.
Here.
Mrs. Turner Birch. Mr. Lippert.
Here.
Mrs. Macklin.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On our agenda is 2.01 is the acknowledgement of our district goals. You can read those at your leisure. And item number 3 is awards, presentations, and communication. 3.01 is our Stella staff recognition. And
Thank you so much. Good evening, Board President, Vice President, and Board members. I do have some Stellar Staff Awards tonight. As we call the individuals' names, we just kind of ask that you come forward. I think Mrs. Armstrong is here to kind of help out just a little bit. We'll start out with, is Ms. Briggs. Ms. Briggs is here. Ms. Briggs, if you don't know, has been with us for multiple years now over Central Primary, and she served as one of our building subs, but she's so much more than just subbing for our teachers and staff, which we know is so huge. But I'm going to tell you, you did not skip a beat during COVID. Prior to that, I know you helped out with PTA. You tutor our babies. You're just so dedicated and go above and beyond for our staff and our students. And we know that you do not have to do that. So we felt that it was so imperative that we just thank you publicly for your service to our district and all that you do and just who you are as a person. So we just want to thank you. So if we could give you a round of applause. And I didn't know if there's anything you want to say. It's up to you. Do you? You want to go? You want to go to the mic? Yeah.
I am very honored to receive this recognition because it was not included in my dreams. Yet it is very much appreciated. Working with the students has brought a fulfillment within me by educating the young students. Many times they make me chuckle because I wear a mask every day. Often the children would say, "Your mask matches your shirt." And I said, "Thank you." It has been a joy to watch the excitement as their little faces when they have an understanding of what subjects they have learned. My tenure as a building sub has helped me to continue to serve the Bedford learning community, doing what I love most, serving others and education. For many years, I have been a member of the Central PTA, and currently, I am the treasurer. I have volunteered, worked, and supported the district for the past 20 years. A person once asked me this question: "Do you like it here?" I told him no. I said I love working here with the students and staff at Central. I'm going to tell you a short story. There was an employee there was, I guess he asked his employee, said, I need you to do a project for me. And he said, okay. He brought the project back to his supervisor, and he said, I completed it. He said, well, can you practice just a little bit more on it? So he did for the second time. And the third time, when he brought it back to him, the employee said that this is the best that I can do. And he said, that's what I want, the very best. And I too have chosen to do my very best for the district. So Dr. Johnson and others who have recognized me, I want to say, from thought for you to thank for me. Thank you. Now you get the turkey sandwich.
All right. Next, we have some true shining stars as well. Just the other day at the School Board Association Conference, we had the pleasure of hearing from our SEL team about the importance of not just caring for our students and our staff and all that our SEL team members do. Though there have been some shifts in departments, we still believe that our counseling department is so huge and imperative to continue being a part of our SEL team to ensure that all students and staff have the support that's necessary to be successful day in and day out. As a result of that, there's been much recognition over the past couple of years by our social workers, our SEL interventionists, our school counselors alike. But tonight we want to recognize Devontae Greer, Marla Henderson, Laura Hogue, and Rebecca School for all their work and service in supporting Heskett Middle School over the past year. So at this time, we ask for you two to come forward, and we really want to thank you.
Thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Also some things that you guys want to say. Thank you. Thank you. You want to talk to I just want to say thank you. What a beautiful opportunity it is to be in the roles that we are, to help to try to guide students in the right direction. What an honor. And it's humbling to be able to have this experience day by day. And so we just want to be thankful and say thank you to all of you. Thank you so much.
And can you talk to them also about, after you're done, about the award that you received?
Oh, so we did, Heskett Middle School was one of 11 school buildings in Ohio that got the Oscar Award, which stands for Ohio School Counselor Accountability Report. So basically, each counseling department, you submit data that shows growth in academics, career, and SEL. And so we were selected to win that award as like an exemplary comprehensive counseling program. So that was really exciting. We were recognized at the All Ohio Counselors Conference last month.
It was third year in a row, and
Yeah,
really, it's due to Laura. She was the person who started Heskett on the path to being recognized, so well, thanks to her. And it really was a dream team at Heskett last year.
Yeah, it was the full team, I think, that really
It wasn't just the school counselors, it
Yeah,
was
it
the
was the whole
SEL interventionist and our school social worker who all were pitching in.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thank you. The board really appreciate all your service and thank you for all that you do for our children. We really appreciate you. 2, there will be a building presentation by the Heskett Middle School principal and staff.
Let me just make sure this is the right one. Yes, that's the right one. Okay, oh, that's how it looks different from this screen, guys. That's why we were trying to figure it out. All right. Well, good evening. Want to say good evening to President Boynton, the board, Superintendent Dr. Johnson, the cabinet, and the guests. Okay, I'm Mrs. Helm, Tawana Helm, building principal of Heskett Middle School. And here's my crew right here. I got my associate principal, which is Jenny Golden. Ethan Rivera, my sixth grade Dean of Academic Achievement. I am missing tonight my seventh grade Dean of Academic Achievement, that is Christopher Callender. I have one of my fantastic school counselors, which is eighth grade here, Ms. Donahue. I have the counseling intern, Mr. Britton, and then Ms. Hogue is sitting down. Okay, I got Ms. Hogue. Where'd you go? Did you leave? I got Ms. Hogue. She is our sixth grade counselor right now. And we are missing our seventh grade counselor. His name is Mr. Greer. He is out sick for today. And then Marla Henderson, right here, you already met her, our SEL interventionist. All right, so I owe everything to them for this school year, so I appreciate that. All right, we're gonna go ahead and begin. You may have seen this before with all the other presentations that the building principals completed. Our tagline, pride, tradition, and achievement. Our mission statement, inspiring everyone every day to achieve excellence. Our District 1 plan goals, June 30th, 2025. We will improve the performance of low academic status students for high school to increase 97% in graduation. And I'll read the last two right here. June 30th, we will improve the performance of all students in grades at Bedford City Schools to increase 10% in reading and in math. And so we're going to kind of piggyback on the District 1 plan goals when we talk about Heskett's 1 plan goals. So our administrative team, I already introduced 3 of them. We have 3 right here, Lubera, Golden, myself. We are missing Mr. Callender. I already met tonight's presenters. And this is our Heskett 1 plan goal. It's slightly different from the other buildings and the 1 plan goal that we just hit. We decided to take a look at 2 areas of need. Our basic and limited groups as it relates to our OST state data from this previous school year. So what we did was for 5th grade, which is our current 6th grade students, we looked at both Carrollwood and Columbus, 5th grade students last year, and we added up their basic and limited categories. Now that equaled 62% of all 5th graders last year in the basic and limited category. So we sat with our BLT, our building leadership team, and we said, what can we do to improve this data? So we decided that we would focus on those 2 areas, and then we would improve it by decreasing the basic and limited areas by 22% for this school year by June of 24. So if you take, that's for 6th grade. We did the same thing for 7th, so we're deciding to go with, this is ELA, and ELA, 6, 7, and 8. They're traveling in cohorts. That's why you're going to see a difference here. We looked at 7th grade data from the previous year, and we saw that we needed to also decrease those areas. We're deciding to increase those areas by 30%. So we looked at the data last year for sixth grade, and if you add up basic and limited categories, it's 80% of our students for sixth grade last year that fell into the basic and limited categories. So we came together as a team and decided we could lower that by 30%. Eighth grade ELA, 48% of our students. We decided that we would go ahead and lower that by 18%. Same things for math. We decided we would lower that by 26%. So we're going to go from 76% basic and limited to 50% basic and limited. The goal is to get those basic kids to proficient and get those limited kids to basic, and hopefully we can get a few of those numbers to proficient. That's the goal. That's what we're looking at. We're doing the same thing for seventh grade. We're trying to lower that by 38%. Same, and for eighth grade, 29%. We already sort of honored some of our fantastic staff members today. I do want to highlight Charles Bradford Jr. He was our Teacher of the Month. We do give an honor to Teacher of the Month every month. That was our October Teacher of the Month. Antonio Rucker, our Staff Member of the Month. And then we also had 21 student attendance standing game winners. Those are perfect attendance students. All right, and we mentioned just a few minutes ago about our illustrious SEL team in 22-23. Heskett School Counseling Team was recognized with their third consecutive Oscar Award for their comprehensive school counseling program. Ms. Hope was slated as, I don't know if you mentioned this, slated as the president-elect of OSCA, effective January 24th. So can we get a clap? And then last but not least, and we're going to tackle this a little bit more in detail, this is our seventh grade ELA and math team, their EVOS results. So, and you'll see why I'm honoring them tonight as well. So, who are our scholars? It's kind of swiveled a little bit here. We have 198 sixth graders, and underneath you can kind of see the breakdown as far as our special education students, 504 students, gifted ELL students. We have 197 grade students, 194 eighth grade students, for a total of 582. And right now, well, for the month of the beginning of the school year to the end of October, our attendance rate was 92.64. All right, so that's not bad, but clearly we need better. All right, so here are some of the subjects that we do teach. And I do want to highlight, these are just a regular ELA, math, science, social studies. However, we do have some advanced courses, as you can see up there, and this is for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I also want to highlight that we have Family Consumer Science and ASL for some of our electives. I want to dive into a little bit of the data that I was just referring to. It's not allowing me.
Hit control and click the link in my chair.
Okay, control, oh no, it's not doing it. It's up here. We got the right date because our technology coordinator is here. Don't count these minutes against this one.
Bless you.
He tried. Okay, so I don't have it in front of me, but I will talk a little bit about our data right now. Our EBA scores, and I just highlighted for 7th grade ELA and 7th grade for math also knocked it out the park when it comes to EBAs. And what that means is our 7th grade teachers, every year, they're showing a trend of growth and achievement. So they're being really rock stars when it comes to 7th grade. So we're hoping to sprinkle some of that rock starism for our 6th grade. That's not a word. ELA teacher. 6th grade and 8th grade as well. So we're super excited about our 7th grade. However, our iReady data, and our iReady data is the platform that we use here in Bedford City School District for academics, and we're having another diagnostic test coming up in the next couple weeks. But that data was not the best data that we were looking forward to. But all that means is we have a lot of room for growth. So that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade data, and I wish you could really see it right now, it's just a lot of room for growth for that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade data as it relates to iReady. But some of the things that we're trying to do here at Heskett is to focus on some of the strategies that we have. And one of the strategies that the entire building is focusing on is something called a jigsaw method. If you're familiar with Hattie's high yield strategies, and I'm not sure if you are, especially if you're not an educator, but what Hattie's high yield strategies is supposed to do is give us the biggest bang for our buck. And what it says is, if a particular strategy has an effect size of 0.4 or above, this is the strategy we may want to consider using within our classrooms. The jigsaw has 1.20, okay? So that's like triple that number that we're looking for. So we decided as an entire building to make sure that every single class, we're talking health, PE, we're talking band out there, they should be implementing, yes, the jigsaw method in all of their classes. So the goal is for us to see a lot of improvement as we progress through the school year. If you take a look at this screen, you'll also see some other Hattie's high yield strategy for ELA, math, science, and social studies. What I tasked my department chairs was to meet with their teams and decide which Hattie's high yield strategy they believe will work well for their subject area. So they chose those areas. So ELA chose text annotation, math, evaluation and reflection, science, summarization, social studies, explicit teaching. What do we want to do with that information? Our plan is coming up soon, at some point after Thanksgiving, we're going to run our very first benchmark readiness assessment. And what that is that should mimic the type of questions the OST shows, right? And this is going to be for our 8th grade science, our math department, and our ELA department. So we're going to do it in increments. We're going to start off with like 10 questions that's focusing on the OST, and we're going to try to build capacity for all of our students so that once we come to January, February, we can kind of shut down the school for 2 hours and actually do a practice test that mimics the OST. So that's what we're doing for those benchmark readiness tests. And then the next thing we're going to do is iReady. So we have an iReady diagnostic, and that's coming up, I think, December 4th. And what the iReady consultants is requesting is that when we give this exam, and this is the platform we use in Bedford, is to do it in 20-minute increments, because we want our students to take their time and work on it. So what we'll do is 20-minute chunks. We'll do a quick check, because if you know anything about iReady, it will show you how the percentage that student is progressing towards the end of the diagnostic. So after 20 minutes, the student should be around 25% complete. The teacher's job is to walk around, make sure he or she is checking the progress of that student. If the student is anywhere above 25%, that student is rushing. We need to slow that student down. If that student is somewhere around 15%, that student needs to speed up the pace. Because remember, that OST is time. So we have to prepare them now for the OST. If not, that anxiety will start creeping in with our kids if we don't start getting them ready now. All right, so we have a grant striving readers grant for CLSD program, and what this grant is helping us with our literacy. So there are 5 components or 5 goals that we do focus on, and here are our goals. The 2 main goals is culture of literacy and evidence-based literacy instruction in core classes. And one other strategy that my entire building is focusing on is explicit instruction. And this is coming from this work, explicit instruction. I believe this work started a year ago. Yeah, about a year ago at Heskett. So if you don't know anything about explicit instruction, it's a systematic method of teaching with emphasis on proceeding in small steps, checking for understanding, and achieving active and successful participation by all students. These are the areas that we are looking for when we do walkthroughs in the classroom: frequent responses, and for informative feedback, clarity, feedback and acknowledgement, equity of individual terms. And one of the things that my teachers are so courageous, because we used to do something called POPs last year, peer observations, where our teachers can pop into another teacher's classroom to see what they're doing. Because we only have a math coach in our building, so we are peer coaching ourselves. So what my teachers decided to do is, hey, sometimes they just don't have the time in their day to pop into another teacher's classroom and see what they're doing, to learn from those teachers, especially if they have experience in that subject area. What they decided to do is they would get the swivel camera, record themselves teaching, show it to the staff, and the staff provides feedback. So technically, they're still popping in the classroom, but on their own time. Multi-tier systems of support, we have MTSS. I'll just show you this graph. One of the things that we have implemented here at Heskett Middle School is that every month we have a designated time for 6th grade teachers to meet with our school psych. We have a designated time for our 7th grade teachers to meet and our 8th grade teachers to meet. And what they do during that time is they bring data anytime that they have students of concern. It's not about trying to figure out if we can test this kid for special ed. That's not what it's about. It's about trying to find interventions and strategies cohesively for that student of need. And at this time, I am going to pass the mic over to Ms. Golden and Ms. Hope.
Thank you, Principal Ham. Good evening, Board President, Board members, Superintendent, and Treasurer. Good evening. So tonight, my charge is just to tell you a little bit about what's going on with the 6th graders. But before I do that, I really want to take just a few minutes to recognize our Heskett Middle School band that entertained you all tonight as you entered the building. So I'd like for them to come forward. These are all 8th graders, and they did a terrific job. So let's start with a round of applause for them. And students, I just want to say thank you for, again, showing up and showing out. And so we have Antoinette is here. Raise your hand. We have Kaylee. We have Caleb. We have Zaya. We have Janiyah, and we have Kennedy. And these great students, they perform under the direction of Miss Raylene Jones, who is also a true Bearcat. So, again, nice job, guys, and thank you again for representing not only our school, but yourselves and your families. So thank you. Nice job. So we are off to a wonderful start this school year. We had the privilege of recognizing our 6th grade scholars last week. We had 9 high honor students, and those are students who, as new middle schoolers, performed 4.0 or better in all of their classes. We had 19 honor roll students, we had 17 merit students, and we also had 13 students who received award for achievement. We are raising the bar at the 6th grade level and throughout the entire school, which I'm very excited about. As you heard from Principal Ham, we are increasing the proficiency level for 6th grade reading and math, and also trying to work on our character as sixth graders and trying to be the best students that we can be by decreasing our office referrals by 10%. You know, every morning we have what you call a morning kickoff, and it's just a lot of fun. Something that I picked up when I was at Columbus Intermediate School. It's just a great way to spread a positive vibe and to get students to know that you belong here, we're glad you're here, and we're going to make it a fantastic day. And so when we're done with that morning kickoff, you know, I usually give them a positive message. Ms. Holt gives them the announcements for today, and then we give them a couple of tips how they can be the very best that they can be. And when we end, we do this chant, and they tell us, they say, we are, and they say Bearcats. We are, and they'll say the class of 2030. And we'll say, we are destined to be great, and we are going to change the world. And that's how I send them every morning with everything they need to change the world. So coming soon, I just want Ms. Hope to share with you.
So coming up, we're really excited. We have a lot of fun things planned for sixth grade. So we do have our sixth grade career day. It's going to be on November 30th. We are piloting a new program. We're going to be starting it soon called No Assignment Left Undone. And so what that will look like is sixth graders who need to get caught up on work, like maybe they were out sick a couple days, and they want just a quiet space to do that during the lunch periods. We're building a space for them where the two of us will be monitoring that, helping them get some extra assignments done during their lunchtime. We have some grade level field trips coming up to the Good Time 3 and STEM Day at the Guardians game. And then we have some CTE field trips. This is all like in May. And so we'll be going to Alrose Steel. It's one of our CTE partners, so we're very excited about that.
And we do want to extend an invitation to all of those events for anyone who would love to join us. We'd love to have you. And so next we're going to have Mr. Michael Britton, and he is, again, our counselor intern, and he's going to tell you what's happening at the sixth grade level. Oh, seventh grade level. I'm stuck on 6.
Good evening. So let's talk about 7th grade. So right now in 7th grade we have 2 wing groups going on. We have our music wing group and we also have our SEL wing group. For music, they're going to utilize music and its impact on emotions to help them connect with other students. And then for our SEL groups right now, we are working on increasing their emotional intelligence. Moving on to that, we have the great privilege of recognizing 5 of our students for higher honors, 17 of our students for regular honor roll, 10 of our students for merit, and then 22 of our students for achievement. We want to take a second and recognize some of our outstanding 7th graders. We had Alfred W., Defensive Player of the Year for football. We had Jemiah B., current valedictorian, and also Reginald J., recognized for perfect attendance. And then coming soon, there's going to be a Cleveland Orchestra field trip, a Pi Day 3-on-1 tournament, and also a field trip to Arlo Steel. And now I'm going to bring up Mr. LeBear and Ms. Dunn.
Alright, so I am the new 8th grade school counselor as of this year. I've been really excited to be at Heskett, joining the team. They do have a really great team there, and so it's been just an honor to be there. So a little bit about some of the things we've been doing in 8th grade this year. We started a new program called WEB, which stands for Where Everyone Belongs. And it is an opportunity for our 8th grade students to take on leadership roles to engage with our new incoming 6th grade students. So they spend the entire year with a small group of 6th graders and just help them kind of walk through and navigate middle school. So it started off with 2 days of training before school started. These 8th graders came in, our awesome web leaders of Ms. Hogue and Mr. Greer and one of our teachers, Mrs. Bruning, trained them in how that we're going to run a 6th grade orientation. The first couple of days of school, the students came in, gave their time to support their 6th graders through their first day of school, some fun activities, and just getting acclimated to their space. Throughout the rest of the year, they recently did a letter writing project where they wrote all of their 6th graders in their groups letters just to encourage them and help them continue to do their best at their time at Heskett. And then within the last couple weeks, they actually did a breakfast where they had our 8th grade leaders and our 6th graders all come together, and they got to have a special breakfast together, again, just to engage. And I do know, again, with a lot of my 8th graders, they tell me all the time, they'll talk about how they got to see their 6th graders in the hallway, they're talking to them about life, boy problems, girl problems, all the things that come with being a middle schooler, right? And so they are really taking on that role of just engaging with each other and trying to support the younger generations as they come up and join their community. So that's been a really cool thing. 25 of our 8th graders got to go on a field trip to Magnet, which is a manufacturing advocacy group network community program. It's down here in downtown Cleveland. They have a really awesome building. They have supports for students doing CTE, but they also have supports for family and community members who are looking for maybe positions and jobs within manufacturing. Our students got to go in, participate in some cool projects, and there's one picture right up there of some hands. It's hard to tell from this far away, it looked cooler up close. There's a little cookie cutter in there that's the shape of Ohio State, and all of our students got to use equipment to make those cookie cutters and take one home with them. So they had a really awesome time. They very much enjoyed it. Some of them figured out manufacturing is not for them. Others were like, this is really cool, I get to do cool things with my hands, so let's check this out. So that was really neat. Last week we also honored 59 students for their academics and 9 students for athletic awards, and we're really proud of all of those students and the hard work that they're putting in. The last thing that we are starting in this next couple of weeks is going to be our 8th grade advisory elections. These are going to be our 8th grade officers who get to support the school again as leaders and try to create different activities for students to do across the year, and they also get to plan some of their fun 8th grade end of year activities that they've been looking forward to. Coming up for our 8th graders, we are diving into some career exploration to start talking about those pathways to their future, to their careers as they move towards high school. We will be doing also a field trip to Arlo Steel. They have in the spring, down in I think in May, they have their 2-day Detroit trip, which I know is always a big deal for our students. They look forward to that opportunity and really working hard to earn their place in that space, because we really got to work toward earning those big ticket items. And then they also are looking forward to all of their farewell activities that come at the end of the year as they sadly leave Heskett but get the exciting opportunity to move forward to high school. And Mr. LeBear is going to share some more information.
Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about some of the discipline data that we do have here at Heskett. So in the tables, you'll see some just key discipline information from the start of the school year until now, and from the same point that we were last year. So you can see that we're down in total number of office referrals, but I want you to pay particularly close attention to the second 2 tables because those are the ones that we are constantly trying to reduce here at Heskett. So it's the number of times that the administrator gives an out-of-school suspension. So you can see that we've significantly cut that number down, and I think that's due to administrators being very visible in the hallways, and of course our SEL team as well. And with the last table, we do have those disciplinary incidents related to violence, and we have cut those in half. And again, I think that's due to our SEL team having conversations with kids, the visibility, and just that relationship with students. But a key thing to all of those is our PBIS program. So we do PBIS rewards here, and that is a Tier 1 intervention that we use at Heskett, and that's where students can be rewarded using a virtual program, and students earn 5 points per day for meeting those ROAR expectations, and they can use those 5 points in a digital store to buy different snacks, items. They can purchase time in a school event, time in the gym or library during lunch. And I'm going to also introduce Ms. Henderson. She's going to talk a little bit about PBIS, the ambassadors team.
Well, the PBI Student Ambassador Team is the student voice of the school, and we're excited. They come recommended, and what they do is they do activities such as supporting the positive school climate. They also, for example, give new students tours through the school, and they meet with the principal. And so that's exciting, and there are some things upcoming, and we're excited about it too. Okay. So the SEL team, we're excited to share with you that there are a number of supports and services for SEL, for the classroom, for the school building, as well as the community. You see the list here. We have a number of restorative services for classroom meetings and circles, for mediations, for suspension interventions, and also for integration into the ATS room. For social and emotional learning, we have WIN group counseling, we have SEL instruction in the classroom, individual counseling and group counseling. There is now a collaboration of PBIS and SEL, and we're excited about that. We think of SEL as like the strength and conditioning, and PBIS is the game, okay? We're out and we're demonstrating those skills that we've learned. Lunch and Learn is quite like art meets SEL. We learn coping skills during lunchtime and make some wonderful things. Voices of Inspiration is also hoping to spread cheer through the school, also supporting a positive school climate. PBIS Student of the Month and the Calm Corner in Student Services. In addition, okay, so we have a number also of supports for our staff. PD during our staff meetings, mindfulness during our staff meetings. Also, teachers can request a link for individual support for strategies for their classroom, and even support for their own emotional and social emotional wellness. In addition to that, working in the community with SEL Family Night. Our leader, Faith Borden, and along with the summer study team, has aligned all of the schools K-12 with monthly themes. So we have that to really be excited about. And finally, in Columbus, we had an opportunity to share some of these strategies for SEL for neighboring school districts and neighboring school counselors. So that's SEL.
All right. On this slide right here, it talks about our parents, community, and school, because that's what we need for student achievement. So here are a couple of the highlights that we do have to bring the community back into Heskett Middle School. So we have STEM night, or STEAM night, math night, our soul food festival, which is coming up in the next couple of months. We have dads and grandmas on duty, and what that is they come to our school and they greet our students in the morning. They do that like once a month. Make a Difference Day, that was close to about a month ago. And of course we have our orientations and SEL night that Henderson just mentioned to you. So what's happening next at HMS? We have a new math curriculum called Reveal. We've already started that work this year, so that's going well. It's still a learning curve, of course. Right now, as far as ELA is concerned, we are in our phase of testing the waters to find a new adopted curriculum. So we're trying to adopt a new ELA curriculum this school year. Our winter sports is up and running with our girls basketball team. They've already started their games, and our boys tryouts have already started as well. Ms. Hogue mentioned to you that we have a 6th grade career fair also. I mentioned earlier about the iReady and the benchmark testing that's coming up, so I don't need to go back over that part. But we also have our winter instrumental concert and our winter choral concert, and I would love to see you all there during that time at the high school. All right, and last but not least, let's hope this works. Have a little video that my team put together with our students. What does it mean to be a Heskett Bearcat? So hopefully the video works for us. Yes.
Being a Bearcat to me means being respectful, being respected. I have been a Bearcat for 2 years now, and I have learned many things of how to take control of my actions and what to do in a situation if needed. That is what a Bearcat means to me. a Bearcat means being successful and representing our school by being on the sports team.
Being a Bearcat means being part of the Bearcat team, supporting it, and being part of the family. Being a Bearcat means representing the school.
All right, thank you so much. And that's a little bit about Heskett Middle School. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There were a lot of things going on at Heskett. But I would like to see that state report card report if you could.
I will definitely share that with you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Share that.
Have any questions or discussion board on the presentation?
I want to say, just comment on just the growth from last year. Just from looking at the video here and the information, looking at the out-of-school suspensions, fights, and just your strong SEL team. You guys are really bringing this together, and I just really love seeing that. So I just want to give you guys kudos.
Can you go to the slide when he's speaking on the discipline and all of that, the referrals?
Right here.
Yes, because I do remember, you know, how it was reported last year. And help me interpret this. According to last year versus this year, even though there has been a slight decline, what I see is a increase at the 6th grade level, decrease in the 7th grade, and then some decreases in the 8th grade. So what is attributed to the increase at the 6th grade level as to why those are so high?
Well, I can't tell you exactly what has contributed to that higher number as it compares to last year. I do know with our 6th graders currently this year, they have a very difficult time keeping their hands to themselves. And so a lot of our concerns are coming from students who are horse playing, and that horseplay may develop into a fight because we kick each other, we hit each other, and we're playing, but one person hits the other person a little too hard. And now there's a concern there. And then that's a classroom disruption, and there's a problem. So, and that's when we are having the most problems with 6th grade. That, and of course, it's always that insubordination. So I can only kind of speak on what I see right now, and that's bringing those numbers up. We tell our students, keep your hands to yourselves. Do not touch one another. We just had an expectations meeting last week, and that we really honed in on that specifically for 6th grade, because we are not seeing those types of behaviors, honestly, in our upper grades, well, specifically 8th grade. We're not really seeing that in 8th grade, but we're getting a lot of that in 6th grade. We have made some changes at the beginning of the 6th grade year, and we continue to make changes as we see a need. So we're always looking for advice and seeing how we can help our students be more successful.
I can appreciate that. However, I do see when you speak to keeping your hands to, it's only 12 for assault and 30 for fighting. So if that's a huge problem, wouldn't that number be higher?
For assault?
Yes, when you're saying you're constant putting hands on each other, horseplay or whatnot,
Was
wouldn't
that
that number
horse-
be higher?
So no, not necessarily for assault. So assault is typically when it's just maybe that one person, that one student is going after another student. The fighting is going to be higher because it starts off as that horseplay, and that's consensual horseplay. And next thing you know, it builds into a fight. And so that's when both of those students are into the office and get a referral or something because it turns into a fight, both of those kids.
So with this depiction though, it only is being reported on violent acts of code of conduct. Where are, like you indicated, insubordination and or, what was the other one you stated? Oh, disruption.
Yes, we have that, we don't have that data here, but that data does exist. So our areas of need is going to be disruption of school, disruption of classroom. That is our number one referral go-getter, in conjunction with insubordination, defiance. So you're right, that's not in this slide. But we do have that data, we can always share.
Okay. Thank you. I will have to give kudos on the SEL team, and congratulations, Ms. Hogue, on becoming president-elect of your association. That is magnificent that you are leading right here from our district. So I do want to give kudos to where you are going within the counseling in the SEL space.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is item number 3.03, and that there will be a presentation from our fall athletics department.
Forgive me. Before I get to the PowerPoint. Yeah, it was a Google slide. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Evening, everyone. So,
Good evening.
my apologies, to address where I came from work though, I literally was at a scrimmage, so I was working. So what I wanted to do was, what was part of my original plan when I got the job, which was to come in and make sure that I kind of, I guess, report out on the success and the growth of, our athletic department over the course of the year. So we'll kind of take it season by season. So this will be the first of 3 with us just coming out of fall. For starters, for those of you that do not know me, my name is JC Commander, and I am the K-12 Director of Athletics. I also feel it's important, though, to mention that we are a department, and so there's 2 other names up there that really deserve a ton of kudos for all of the work that they do. Starting with, I call him the most popular man in Bedford. He doesn't like it. He gets upset whenever I shout him out, but I keep doing it because of just how vital he is to the success of the department and helping to ease my transition into this role being new. So, Mr. Dan Brinson, who is also in charge of athletics at Heskett. And also our athletic department secretary, Ms. Heather Layton, who is not here. So, the hashtag at the bottom, that is something that we, I feel like you kind of need something that bonds you, that brings you together. So, Rise of the Bearcats has kind of been our thing all year. So if you notice on social media, that's kind of how I tag everything, and I ask a lot of the kids and the coaches, as they do things, just add that to it. I'm gonna do is report out on all of our fall programs and just tell you a few things that, you know, highlights and things of that nature. But again, the presentation is on here, so I'm not gonna read per se, just kind of give you the cool stuff. So our Lady Bearcat soccer team, coached by Mr. Chan Coleman, a total of 19 athletes. They don't let the record fool you. They did take second in the conference. What we're probably most proud of is the fact that we had 3 kids who were all conference, and you can see their names up there. Ms. Ananingwa Farone, who also doubled as our kicker for the football team. Funny, we kind of turned the corner when she joined us, so I think it's important to mention that. Miss Amelia Hayward, the senior, and then Miss Angelina Parrish, who forgive me, Mr. Coach Coleman just corrected me, she's actually a junior, not a freshman, so I will fix that. What I'm most proud of probably regarding that team and all our athletic teams is when we stress student athlete, student is the big part and it's the most important part. So out of those 19 kids, 13 of them were postseason academic All-Americans, and how we rate those and how we can come up with that, or basically what we decide for the criteria is they need to have a 3.0 GPA or better. So out of 19 students, 13 of them kind of had this honor, so I think that's important and that's worth mentioning. Not to mention an overall team GPA of 3.4. So again, very impressive. Good stuff. Although we do not like losing her, we are losing Amelia Hayward, who is the senior, but the entire team, minus Amelia, is coming back. So we're looking forward to building on, you know, the record. And obviously, with Heskett having just presented, one of the things that Mr. Brinson and Ms. Layton and I and the coaches want to work on is getting a boys and a girls team at Heskett. We think one of the main ways to grow the programs at the high school is to have them playing earlier and competitively. So that's one of our things that we are shooting for, and it's in my conversations with coaches, you know, as we kind of round out the season. All right, moving on to our boys soccer team. 21 student athletes, head coach Mr. Charles Harger, 7 wins, 11 losses. Again, they also took second in the conference. Think it's worth mentioning for this team, they actually hosted a playoff game and won it and advanced to the second round. So again, first time in quite some time that we had a home playoff game for soccer at Bearcat Stadium, so I was very proud of that group. You also see the 2 all-conference selections, one of them being a freshman, Hayden Harvey, and he is a freshman, I'm sure of that. So, season synopsis, again, kind of like with the girls team, we only have one senior, Mr. Boucher Stratiot. So, for those of you that are familiar with the Stratiot family, there's a lot of them, okay, and they are all great kids. Boucher's obviously, you know, in that line with them. So, again, you see that they advanced to round 2, ran into Medina High School, which, for those of you who are familiar with soccer, you are not, they were the #1 team in our region, and they are very good. So, I was proud of the boys for the effort that they put forth. Again, same goal for this group, coming into next season. We need to establish a boys team and a girls team at Heskett, so we can continue to get them playing and get them more ready to play, so that when they hit the high school, we're rocking and rolling. The Lady Bearcat volleyball team, again, another impressive season. We have some volleyball parents in here, so 27 student athletes on that team. This group, I will say, it's important to mention, again, getting our kids playing sooner. There was, in our program, there was a freshman team, a junior varsity team, and a varsity team. So we had the kids competing at all levels, which again, gets them more ready. You see my theme here, with getting them more ready to play sooner. 11 wins, 10 losses, 4th in the league. I will say this, there was a lot of good volleyball played in the LEO this year. So, and for our team to, once again, I'll jump to the bottom, only having one senior, they're all coming back. So that's an important thing to mention. I'll jump back up. 2 all-conference selections, one of which was senior Miss India Woodson. I mean, she's kind of like all everything. So we'll mention that. And then Miss Leah Grimes, who was a sophomore, who took second team. Probably again, the crown jewel of the fall programs. Out of 27 athletes, 20 of them were postseason academic All-Americans, and they had a team GPA of 3.5. And stressing the student and the student athlete. And then goals for this season. I think it's also important for those of you who follow volleyball, getting the kids playing competitively. So JO volleyball, equivalent of AAU basketball, travel basketball. Well, 8 of our girls are going to be playing JO with various programs. So again, they're going to be continuing to play competitively, which is only going to make them even better when they come back and kind of rejoin us. So really looking forward to seeing this group play next year. I will move forward here. All right, the football team, coached by none other than Mr. Zach Toth. 80 total student athletes, once again, 3 levels. So you had a freshman, a JV, and a varsity team. 5 wins, 5 losses, but the way the league broke down this year, there was a 3-way tie for first place in the league. So you had a 3-way league champ kind of thing. So again, worth mentioning. We also boast about having the player of the year in the league and Mr. J.J. Hudson, who is a junior. And we had 15, including JJ, 15 of our players selected to the all-conference team, that being first team, second team, or third team. So I've been busy doing write-ups on all of them, but they all are going to get their individual love from me. 32 kids on that team were postseason academic All-Americans, team GPA of 2.7. Again, larger number of athletes, but again, worked out. Team synopsis, stumbled out of the gate, but again, you start 0-4, you kind of have to take stock where you're at, and then we finished 5-1 and ended up missing the playoffs by 1 spot. So I think it was an impressive recovery. I think it's also worth mentioning that 2 of those losses came by a grand total of 9 points. Both of those losses were to teams that actually made the playoffs. You know, so again, it's little things like that that I have to point out because that's kind of my job. I have a head coach who's like, doesn't matter, I get it, but let's look at the stuff we did do great. And again, that's what great coaches are. Great coaches, they are hard on themselves and they want to focus on being victorious and all that stuff. So it's my job to kind of come in and say, okay, let's find the good stuff. And again, I'm his biggest fan, so to speak. I think it's important to mention also that Coach Toth has been a guy who consistently does a lot around here. So in conversations that we've had, he's decided to kind of take a step back from doing so much, and he's going to really, really drive our off-season program. So again, him stepping away from basketball hurt his heart, but he also realizes that he can have just as much impact throwing all of that into our kids starting basically in December with him. Trying to get him to hold till January, but he's anxious to get out the gate. So, and again, probably the biggest goal for us is making sure that we have a solid off-season program in the weight room that has to do with strength, conditioning, speed, agility, stuff like that. And not only that, but it needs to be databased so that we can track it, so we can see where our kids are growing and where we need to improve. And not only that, the kids can see where they're improving. So things like that are important and they matter. Cheerleading. Yes, I speak on them as athletes because they are. They're every bit the athlete that everyone else is. So again, 3 squads. I think one important season accolade for them was they participated in the Cheer America camp, and I may be saying it wrong, and Coach Jazz would hurt me if she was here listening to it. But we had 3 or 4 cheerleaders who were recognized and are now going to have the opportunity, should they take it, to basically compete with the national team, which I think that's very important. I think that says a lot about the quality of coaching that our girls are getting. So out of 29 student athletes, 14 of them were postseason. Team GPA of 3.1. Goals for me with this group are, again, trying to get equal opportunity to all of our programs. So I've already had conversations with Coach Jazz about the cheerleaders competing at performing at other sporting events. So getting them to a soccer game for boys and girls, getting them to a volleyball game, getting them, again, anywhere we can get them where they can kind of pump up school spirit, I'm all for it. All right, moving on, cross country. I believe this is the last one of the fall. So Coach Leah McKean did a phenomenal job coming in. This was her first year coaching varsity cross country. Probably her best moment would be Hashay Commons, who's a sophomore, winning the open meet at the George Gross Invitational, which says a lot for him. And this was Hashay's first year running cross country. So, one postseason academic All-American, Casimira Clark, team GPA of 2.6. again, like, there seems to be a youth theme with a lot of our teams. We're not like 1 or 2 seniors in each program, which says great things about where we're headed. One of the things that I have to brag on is Heskett, okay, in collaboration with Heskett, Coach McKean and the Heskett coaches put on their own cross-country invitational for the middle school level, where they had roughly somewhere between 60 to 75 runners at the school competing from different schools. And Mr. Brenton had I don't know, he disappeared. No, he didn't. He's there. He had a large hand in doing that too. So again, doing things that are showing off, you know, the things that we have and giving our kids a chance to compete. So all that stuff is important. Next year, we're going to kind of continue to do that. The coaches are already excited about stuff. They're already talking about doing an invitational at the Metro Park. So, you know, Mr. Brents and I have our work cut out for us already. So, but we're all for it. Goals for us. Goals for us. For me, it's taking a look at our weight room. All right, that's kind of like my next big project now that I kind of got my feet wet, and making sure that we are creating or getting the things that we need so that we can keep our athletes competing at top notch and making use of that space. So that's kind of like going to be our big project moving forward, along with everything else we normally do. Another thing I'm focusing on is PD for coaches, so getting our coaches to conference. The Ohio State Football Conference, there's basketball conferences for coaches. Coach Hoon, the varsity wrestling coach, just went to the Ohio State Clinic. So getting our coaches in front of other coaches or with other coaches where they get a chance to kind of just clinic and talk about techniques and things that they're doing. How do they build their programs? Like, all that stuff matters, even in the coaching ranks. So that's something that I want to stress, and I'm really driving that in my evaluation with all of our coaches, which brings me down to my next one. Having real conversations with coaches about how their season went. Part of that evaluation process is surveys that are going out to parents, that I'm going to compile that data and share that with coaches, because I think it's important for parents to have a voice and coaches to hear what the parents have to say and how things impacted their children, and then which ultimately impacts us as parents if our kids come home talking about something. So I think that all of that is valuable data for coaches to make decisions about how they're going to move and how they're going to operate. And then obviously increased communication. I inherited an athletic website that is great. We just need to utilize it. So one of the things that, again, Mr. Brinson and Ms. Layton and I are doing, I'm trying to make better use of it. I'm getting things onto the website as they happen, and we kind of now have a rotation and have a plan in place for the winter, which, you know, was not necessarily fair to the fall, but I'm kind of learning the job, I'll be honest. I want to make sure that we're in a steady rotation and getting things out so that parents can see it, so that everyone can see it. You know, I want to increase traffic on our website so that people are going and finding and being able to see our kids highlighted and the great things that they're doing. Last slide is not on here. One of the things I will talk about is with the preseason academic All-Americans, those kids get into games for free. It's one of the motivational tools that we use for the group or for all of our student athletes to get them to strive. Now, obviously, we want them to do better than a 3.0, but if they can hit that 3.0, they get into games for free. And I think that that's something that has pushed our kids. And I will say that we had 88 preseason academic All-Americans in fall. We ended the fall with 91. And then for winter sports, we have an upwards of 120 athletes who are preseason academic All-Americans for our winter sports. So I think we have things that are trending in the right direction, and we're just going to continue to do that. We're not a finished product, but we're on our way.
Thank you, Mr. Commander. Great job. I really, really like the department goals, the athletic department goals. I think that's very important. You gotta know where you're going. And to focus on where you were, you gotta know where you're going. So I really like that, and congratulations to all of our talented athletes. And they'll be coming back next year, which is great. And I know they're only gonna get better. Thank you so much.
Quick question, can you speak on these are the fall sports, can you speak on what sports are to come in the winter, just so we kind of let us know?
Absolutely. So, boys basketball, I was actually at a freshman scrimmage that was happening right in Shipley. So we have boys basketball, we have girls basketball, we have bowling, boys and girls. Obviously we have sideline cheer. We have esports, which is gonna fire up here quickly. We have varsity and JV with Coach Posick doing that. Indoor track, boys and girls, they're firing up. We have swimming and diving. I feel like wrestling. There's a lot. I thought I was gonna get winter off, but I'm not. So I'm trying to think of anything else, and if I have, forgive me. Oh, dance. So we have cheer, and then we have dance as a form of our basketball games.
Did you mention indoor track as well? Okay. Kudos to our volleyball girls, our cheerleaders, for sure, once again, because I think they don't get the recognition all the time that they deserve. So I just want to say kudos to volleyball, because they had a really good season this year. So I just want to put that extra shout out there. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is item number 3.04. This is how we pay for everything. It is our 5-year forecast, and it's being presented by a treasurer.
All right, good evening, Board President, Mrs. Boynton, Mr. Akins, and the board members, and our community members. Tonight, I'm presenting to you our 5-year forecast on our general fund. But before I get started, I do want to acknowledge, this is not in the right mode.
You can exit out and hit presenter view. To the right. Go right. Keep going a little bit more. Click. There you go.
And then hit?
Yep.
There you go. Better, okay. Before I get started, I do want to acknowledge my team members that are here tonight to support me. I know one is going to hate it, but if you can just stand up really quick so I can acknowledge you for coming out tonight. Thank you. And throughout the night, we've heard everyone really give kudos to their team. My department has been through a lot of challenges and a lot of obstacles. We've done it as a team. So thank you guys again, and thank you for coming out. Sorry about so many presentations before you got to see me go, but here we are. So there you go. All right, so the objective of a 5-year forecast. The first objective and the most important to me is to engage you, the Board of Education, and our community members on the long-range planning discussions for the financial issues facing the school board. It also allows us to certify our 412 certificates, and it provides a method for the Department of Education and Workforce and the state auditors to identify schools with potential financial problems. So before we actually dive into the 5-year forecast, I'm going to try to keep mine short because there was a lot before us, but I want to quickly talk about the total budget process. So in January, we did our tax budget, which is basically the county telling us what our levy dollars are, and we're requesting to use those funds. In May, we do one of our 2 required 5-year forecasts. In June, we do our temporary appropriation, which is to start the next fiscal year, and then we do our final appropriations, which is to end the past school year. And when I say appropriations, that's a budget. Most people know it as a budget. In September, we do our permanent appropriations. The permanent appropriations is a little misleading, as it's not really permanent. Throughout the year, I can go back to the board and to the county to request increase or decrease based on if we have additional funding coming in or changes throughout the year. And then that brings us to tonight, which is our November forecast. The important thing to know about the forecast is that this is an opportunity for the board, the superintendent, and our executive leadership team to look at our data and also use the assumptions of what we know at this moment in time to make decisions about what we want to do going forward. We do that in November and May because that allows us in May to see what we're trending for the current year and to make adjustments to keep going forward. So to start the 5-year forecast, I wanted to do a comparison, and this is going to be very important throughout the rest of the presentation, and look at what our assumptions were a year from today. So November of 2022, we had projected that for this fiscal year, we would have revenue of almost $57 million. We projected that we would have expenditures of $58 million. I'm sorry, the font's small, it was bigger when I prepared it. But then today, I'm saying that based on the assumptions that we know and what we're trending for this year, that our revenue is going to be $58 million and that our expenditures are going to be close to $63 million. When we look at the revenue side of this and we talk about the difference that we're seeing here, the first thing that's important to understand is that when we prepared this forecast in November of 22, we did not have the state budget finalized, so we did not know if they were going to update the input into what decides our funding. So that's the biggest part when we look at the revenue side. When we look at the expense side, there's a lot of factors that goes into what changed from a year ago to now. The first being that we had the data actually posted in our system, so as the accounting office, the treasurer's office was actually able to see what we trended last year, what our salaries and what our benefits came in. So we changed our baseline going forward for what our salary and benefits were going to be. And again, this is going to be very important as we continue to go through the forecast and look at our numbers. Another part of that is that inflation. We have inflation that has really jumped and increased, and we see that in our contracted services, and we see that in our supplies that we purchase. So those are the main things that create a difference for that. So now I want to suggest to look at this year's spending and talk about Bedford's revenue and expenses separately, individually. So we want to start with the revenue. Our revenue makes up local taxes 61%. For this year, we're expected to get $35 million. And then our state funding makes up 24% of our revenue, and we're expected to get about $14 million. And then we have another almost $9 million in all other revenue. That could be interest, that could be tuition payments, and that makes up 15%. So when we talk about the local taxes, that includes our residential properties, that includes our commercial properties, and that also includes our public utility, personal property taxes that we receive. Again, the local taxes makes up 61% of our revenue. So it's important to understand how that funding correlates to school funding. So I want to talk a little bit about how we calculate our tax bill. So when the tax bills are calculated, they take the home value, and it's the home value that the county gives your house, not if you go on Zillow and look at your house value, it's what the county gives your house. And then at 35% of that, they take that and they multiply it towards our tax rate. And then from there are state reimbursements. For instance, there's homestead. If you live and own your house, you get a discount. We have senior citizens or disabled, they get some discounts. And then that's how you get your current tax bill. Within that tax rate, it's not just schools, it's other entities and local governments also that makes up that total tax bill. But now we're going to focus on just the school portion of it. So when we talk about the school portion of the local taxes, in 1976 there was a bill, House Bill 920, that passed, and it flattened districts being able to see increases in the funding that we received, even if home values went up. So even if your home value went up, they flattened the rate so that we still get the same amount of dollars from a levy that was passed whenever it was passed. So that's very important. Again, all of these pieces are going to tie in. School funding is a very complicated web of formulas, but it's very important to understand how all the numbers work together. So the second component of our revenue is the state funding, which comes through the Fair School Funding Program. The state changed the Fair School funding, the funding program in '22, and it's made up of 4 components. They look at the base cost per pupil, they look at the number of students enrolled in our schools, they look at our local personal property wealth, and they look at our taxpayers' income. So that base cost per pupil, which is another big change in the formula, is specific to each district. So it looks at your actual cost of salaries, it looks at your staff and teacher ratios, all these different factors to determine what the base cost per pupil is. For our district, it is, I think, 8,000. So we get, our base cost is calculated to be $8,144 to educate a student. Of that $8,144, we, the district, cover $5,000 of the cost, and the state covers the remaining $3,000. So what drives how they decide what weight each group gets is they look at the property values and they look at the taxpayers' income. And they come up with this formula, again, it's very complicated, but then they decide what percentage and they multiply it times the enrolled students. So, very important concept to understand. When we talk about our funding and dollars that we get, house value stays the same, we get the same amount of dollars. When we talk about school funding, if your house value goes up, now it shifts, then now the school has to cover more. So the house value is treated differently in 2 different parts of our funding when it comes to revenue. Another component of the state funding is our supplementals. We get money for our disadvantaged, our special ed, our CTE. So those are additional fundings on top of the base funding. I think I got all the key points there. So when we look at the state funding, we go back to 2022, go through 2028. You see in like the first 4 years here that you are seeing it increasing at a reasonable rate. Part of that is because when the state funding was approved, it wasn't approved at 100%. So they're phasing in what they approved as what we should get funding. So they might say it costs $8,000 to fund the kid, but we're not getting that full $8,000 yet from the state. They're funding it in to be able to pay it all. So when you get later in the formula, the line starts to flatten. The reason for that is a couple of reasons. One, now we're fully phased in, so we're not seeing those big jumps anymore. And important here, again, to understand is in my assumptions, I am assuming that the state is going to vote in the next biennial budget that they will continue to phase it in. But we only have voted in, phase in through 2026. Another part is we know, what I'm sharing tonight is that based on the trend and what the data says, we expect Cuyahoga County house values to go up by 18 or 20%. So remember when I talked about our funding and how if your property gets richer, we get less money from the state. That means that our funding is going to go down. So that's flattening out a little. As well as our enrollment. If our enrollment is declining, they're multiplying that by the number of students. So once again, our funding is starting to flatten. So we're not seeing it bump as fast as it was in the previous years. So again, important to understand that where we are seeing the increase, even though it's small, only accounts for 24% of our revenue. Where we're not seeing it is 61% of our revenue. We talked about that. All right, so when we combine our local funding and our state funding together, this is what it looks like from 2019 going to 2028. It's a relatively flat line when we look at our revenue, except for in 2023, which again, that's timing with when the state funding formula switched and we got that big bump in a little bit of state funding. Okay, so now if we look at the other side of the equation, which is our expenses. For this year, we're projecting that our personnel costs, which accounts for 75% of our expenses, will be $47 million. Our purchase services, $7 million, and all other expenditures, $8.7 million. And that's going to include our supplies, capital, bus purchases, things like that is what our other expenses are. So, what's important when we talk about expenses? Some of the biggest changes is that in fiscal year 25, next fiscal year, ESSER dollars, which are the COVID dollars that schools received from year 2021 through 2024, will go away. Those funds no longer exist. So every district in the state of Ohio has something called the ESSER cliff. And that's where all the money that was in ESSERs is falling off the cliff and it's falling into your general fund now. So your salaries, your benefits, your expenses, anything that you had that was being paid for by ESSERs now is going to come into your general fund. And so we're seeing a huge jump in our expenditures. It's coming also to our general fund with inflation on it. So the best way that I can think of to explain this is when my daughter went to college, I was no longer paying for Netflix. When she went, Netflix was like $2.99. When she came back, and it came back to me, now it's $14.99. So it's like that inflation. So now it's coming back to you at a higher rate than what it was when it fell off of your general fund. So that's a big part of what we're seeing with our expenditure jump. We also have the fact, I think I talked about it earlier, that we have real salary data, so that's trending in here now. And when you look at salary, there are built-in raises, and that compounds year over year. Oh, I have notes. So we talked about property values. So I got all the key points there. So now, when we put our revenue and we put our expenses together, we started this fiscal year with about $20 million in the bank. We expect to bring in the $58 million. We expect to spend $62 million, which means we have a deficit spending for this fiscal year of $5 million. So what does that look like when you compound it over 5 years? Today, this again is a projection of where we are today with what is happening today. That means that when you look at this chart, our green line, again, revenue, flat. Our gray line is our expenses growing. So we're projecting that we have a negative cash balance by fiscal year 26, and that the net over the 5-year period is $20 million. That again is if we do nothing, we change nothing, which the state won't let us not change anything, but that's what we project today, 5 years from now, if we continue where we are. This is just showing you that in numbers now. Again, the line across the bottom is showing our deficit spending each year for the next 5 years, and it's showing you the bottom cash balance. And on that very bottom row, where it's fiscal year 26, the bottom arrow, that's where we get into our negative cash balance. So just to summarize a lot of what I just said, we have the state funding increase due to the new formula, which is great, but it's only 24% of our revenue. We have the local funding, which is remaining flat, which is 61% of our revenue. We have a decline in enrollment. We have property values, which are going to increase, which again, the state funding is based on property values. We have the ESSER cliff falling into our budget, some this year and some of next year. We have salary, which includes those salaries and benefits and inflation. And we have salaries and benefits in general compounding year over year. Our challenges, I've talked about these again, but I'm just going to keep saying it, is that our costs are exceeding, our expenses are higher than our revenue. A lot of it is ESSER's cliff. We have a staffing shortage in our classified staff. What that does to our budget is when we have a ton of overtime, and we have a ton of contracted services to cover for where we can't hire classified staff. And contracted services cost us a lot more money than if we have them in-house. I spent the last couple of months just digging into these numbers and looking at what was really pushing up the expenditures. Talked about the reappraisal coming up for Cuyahoga County. We have declining enrollment, and we've had no operating levy in our district in 9 years. So that's a lot of our challenges. These are just some graphics to support what I was telling you. So right here, we're looking at the green line is our revenue, the gray line is our expenditures. It's an alligator. In the accounting world, no one likes to see an alligator in a graph. It's a bad thing to see. So we're seeing here just our revenue and expenses are creating an alligator. This is our enrollment that we're seeing is declining. We do show this year that our enrollment bumped up. A lot of that is due to children coming back to school that had left during COVID we're starting to see those kids come back. But we still continue to trend our enrollment down, and that's because we look at big picture when we're budgeting, and we're looking at our kindergarten cohort, or the classes coming in. And so I know specifically, don't quote me on any of these numbers, I'm just gonna use a round number, that our kindergarten class coming in is like 400, while our senior class going out is like 500. So just that, we have to think about that when we're trending enrollment, when state funded is a part of our revenue. So again, this here is another graph, which you see is the alligator. We don't like alligators, and this is showing our student enrollment compared to our FTE certificated enrollment. Again, it's an alligator mouth. And this here is the day's cash on hand, and this is just showing that we go into a negative cash balance in 2026. So we already talked about the forecast. What next? So the very beginning, I said the purpose of a 5-year forecast is for me to communicate to the community and to my board members what our financial position is. As the treasurer, my role is to provide sound guidance so the team can make decisions with what we need to do in the district. So what can we expect next? I should have put this up top. The most important thing highlighted green is a plan of action needs to be put in place between now and March to reduce expenses by at least $3 million. We need to look at, so that's what we need to do. Also, coming for the May forecast, which things that are going to be updated when we do our next forecast, is we have the CTE program that needs to come on, and we are looking at the enrollment for that and which programs the kids want to be in. And so once we know that, we can start working on the budget, the revenue, and the expense. And that's going to be important because our state funding is going to be dependent on which programs we pick, and it's weighted. So that's going to be important while I'm making the budget. I wanted to add in here that we're working with Parma School District on that revenue and expense to help us project those expenses, because they currently have a comprehensive CTE program. I put levy there, that should be program. They currently have it, so they're assisting us with creating that budget so that we're not doing it from scratch. We have someone to assist us with building that. We just are in the final steps of our healthcare committee with our benefits, so I'll be able to put some updates in the assumptions there. We have some anticipated administration cuts. We're gonna do our staffing and enrollment analysis, and we're gonna continue to monitor our actual data throughout the rest of this year to see how it's trending and try to tighten up where we can to try to bring that number down this year so it doesn't keep compounding as fast into the next years. So I got stuck at the end, didn't have the funnest presentation, but do you have any questions for me as the board?
Interesting stuff. Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Yeah, it's not the fun stuff. So I see that we will have a plan of action, and a lot of things need to occur. So we thank you for the report.
And I know you Tabby said March, but she knows, Tabby and I are kind of like a little bit the same in that, like, we started talking about this like a while ago. Like, March is too late. We need to be proactive in terms of the plan. Again, when she talks about assumptions, that's if we do absolutely nothing, which we know is not okay.
Board, do we have any questions or comments on the assumption?
You know I got a few. Going back to, if you know just accounting as a whole or financial analysis, you understand that in business, salaries are definitely, your personnel is always going to be your highest liability, right? However, I understand that we've hired quite a bit of people in the last year or two, and a lot of them have fallen under the grant-funded positions out of ESSER. You stated that I do know about the ESSER cliff, and that we're no longer having those funds. And you also indicated that it would absolve into the general funds at that point. So now we're looking at those grant-funded positions now coming out of the general fund, therefore making the expenditure even greater. So, where are we on, supporting those grant-funded positions, or now are those individuals gonna be being terminated? I do see anticipated administrative positions, being looked at being cut, which is all these hierarchy positions, but like SEL and things like that, that I know were being funded out of grant funds, that's now gonna be absolved, so how can we speak? I know that's probably.
I was gonna say, yeah, I present the numbers
Right.
and give them, so they can make decisions and give them, so I will let Dr.
And I wanna say, I think there's an assumption that most of them came from, have already been in ESSER. So I just wanna also thank Mr. Harrington for when he came in and did his asset reviews, and that we began to, as a district, better, I don't say, that we utilize all of our grant funds. ESSER is just one piece of the pie. So we've been having these conversations about ESSER leaving, for 2 years now. There are some districts I know that maybe are just now having those conversations, but we felt as a district that was not appropriate. So most of our positions are not coming out of ESSER. There are many, many grants that we receive as a district, and those grants determine what positions or should be or can be utilized for that. Also, some of these positions,
clinic aides,
Clinic
some of the
aides.
COVID-related
Yeah.
positions that we added, and I can give you the breakdown of what was covered in ESSER.
we were very open and
Yeah.
honest from the beginning about that need, and that some of these were not long-term, because the whole goal, as the COVID money was given, the whole purpose was to support above and beyond after COVID to get us back to close that gap, that's per se.
Okay, and then, once again, looking at and then once again, we know this is projected, it is based on assumption, and it's gonna be based on, us really tightening up on some things. And I had mentioned this before, prior to you stepping on, where we saw this trending over 2 to 3 years ago.
Yeah, the negative cash balance started in 2020, where we were spending, not negative cash balance, the deficit spending started in 2020. The only non-deficit year was 2021. We all know 2021 was the year that there were no kids in school. So this was already occurring pre-pandemic. But we had ESSER to kind of absorb it for the last 4 years. And so now that we're coming out of it, we're seeing the residual of pre-ESSER, add ESSER. It's like the perfect storm right now. But as long we, as an administrative team, get creative, look at grant dollars, look at, again, like it's important, like there were a lot of decisions, let me know if you don't, like, if I'm overstepping, but about classroom sizes during COVID, things like that, that now we have to relook at that and reanalyze, and then the team is gonna be meeting probably more often than we're used to meeting to really figure out how to right size the budget.
And I think I also talked about this last year, at one of the board meetings, or multiple board meetings, about attrition. And trying to, look at that as we do have some retirements and other pieces, or some individuals might leave. That also will definitely assist us, but I cannot stress enough, I think not just us, but all employers, talking about the cost of services, and goods, from everything from, gas, diesel, to us having to, as you see on all of our board agendas, when we're talking about OTs, PTs, and us having to use services, to best support the needs of our children.
Staying in that same vein, because I didn't quite finish what I was gonna ask. But as I had stated, or the previous treasurer as well, and I saw the trending of going down. However, then I think it was showing a deficit as of this year. It would have said in 2023. I see that it's pushed out, and I wanna say maybe the last forecast that he did, it said 2026. Now we're seeing 2028, that real deficit. Want to make sure that, once again, I'm going to ask the question, are we looking at, we haven't had operating funds before, this now once again has to do with operating costs. Are we looking at going back to the community in another 4 years, asking for money because we're at deficit spending? And I know this is appropriated based off of assumptions, but once again, it's important that we're also paying attention so that we ain't saying, hey y'all, we need some more money right now.
Right, so in the previous forecast, we were going negative cash in 2028. We've actually advanced it to 2026. So, and I can show you the comparison. So in the May forecast, actually we weren't even negative yet. We were down to like a few days of cash on hand, but we weren't negative yet. In this one, we're negative in 2026. Second part of your question again?
Operating levy.
Operating levy. So we haven't been in 9 years. Historically, we went, it was in 2014. Historically, we went probably every 4 to 5 years. Again, a lot of districts are seeing this problem. It was probably due right when COVID came. No one was doing levies during COVID. Then you had ESSER dollars, so you have too much cash on hand to go and ask for operating levies from your community. I can't speak to when yet because that's where we're gonna meet as a team and look at how we can right size the budget and see when we would need to go for an operating levy. But traditionally, knowing that our local funding is flat, House Bill 920 kind of created it that districts have to continue to go back to communities to ask for operating levies in order to continue to sustain with the increase in expenses on a regular basis.
And I was just kind of constituted as in, and even in our personal lives, I mean, you only have so much money. So at some point, you gotta come to the table and sit down and talk about the priorities. The one thing that I will say as a district that I have to commend the board and previous leadership is getting us to this point to not ever having to go back to your community, even though inflation has continued to rise. So I think it's imperative that we do our part to push it out as long as we possibly can, from the top to the bottom, to address this.
Going back also to where, I know we're talking about CTE programming coming in and what we're gonna use to support that, that will come out of supplies and materials, correct? When it comes, like the line item, or is that, are there gonna be some opportunities for grants too?
Some of it would be our asset line, so our capital assets, which is still kind of like a supply, little different in the economy. Yes, definitely, it's a asset, but then also, we will also probably be looking at some salaries, but we are trying to figure out how that's gonna work. Yeah, so mainly, it's a split between all of our budget lines that the CTE program would hit. And again, it's hard to say how much without knowing specifically which programs, which is why, when we meet, like that's gonna be a big part in the budget. Depending on the programs, it's gonna depend what supplies and different things that we need and teachers that we'll need to hire or move around.
Was any of the thought process of what it was gonna cost for each one of those programs done in advance before we said we're gonna do these programs too? The new ones, not the ones that are like already being operated currently in our district, but with these added ones that we're now bringing here to be housed.
So one of the things that we're doing now, everything is based on need. So it's honestly not that we just look at staffing just because of CTE programs. Every year, we look at our budget and we obtain staffing and we hire staffing based on need and what we're able to afford. So we send the registration guide out to the students, we ask what they would like, and we support those needs based on our ability to be fiscally responsible and feeling, for example, you know, we've already communicated that we can't continue to always have classes run that have 8 kids in them. But we need to provide options for our babies to take advantage and have that same equitable opportunity, which is why when we sent our survey out, and I know myself was charged by this board to bring our CTE programmings back along with our facilities planning committee, we tried to be, we were very open and honest about the commitment and the cost behind that. But we also have to be very fiscally responsible in doing that. So we definitely will look at need, And we will look at ensuring that we have opportunities for our children based on that need.
And then I'll add from the treasurer's office perspective, and I spoke about it briefly with a lot of them when we did our May and when we did our permanent budget. We had a lot of challenges to overcome ourselves. We didn't have actual numbers to look at until now. And so that's why I think it's important that we are, now that we have the numbers, that we continue to look at them. One of our top priorities in our office, I think I talked about this when I first came on, is staying current with our actuals so we can trend when things are going in a bad directions, and then I can communicate to individuals to know sooner than later when things are starting to change and when we need to look at how we're spending. So in November of last year, a lot of these items, or May, weren't in here for us to properly trend. But again, that's kind of the importance of having this twice a year, is to try to catch it and then act on it, make a plan, and then keep checking it every 2 years. It's a very, people don't enjoy doing it, but it's a check and balance. You're constantly looking at where your budget is moving to. And you're looking at actual numbers for the year so that you can move that into your trend going forward.
Thank you very much for the clarity, because it's important to kind of pull out and just make sure. My last thing is, what is found in the expenditures under other objects?
Okay, so I was, let me go back. Is it like $5.2 million?
No, the actual right now is $948.44.
Okay, so.
940.
Other expenditures. Right here. No?
It's under expenditures.
14%. The almost 9 million.
I'm looking at this, this budget line right here.
Which year is
Under,
that?
this is the actual fiscal year of 2023. But it has the forecasted projections out.
So this here is
Under
current
other
fiscal year,
objects.
so that's 24. But still, I can tell you what, it's close to 9 million still though, roughly. I can, no, let me just see.
Not this particular line, I'm just asking this particular line, this is not quite $1 million.
I can research that and tell you, because it has the 4.3, I don't know that code off the top of my head right now, but I can tell you.
But you know all those codes. What's the code, Dante? Dante.
4.3? Yeah, I'll look that one up for you and tell you, just because that's a generic description on that report. Y'all can break that down for you.
So, cause I also wanna know, what funded this wall right here? The wall with the door, the new wall that was built?
Security?
Yeah, this.
Not the
The actual
metal
wall and the
detector, the
door?
actual
Yeah,
wall.
I would say most of it was in-house by our maintenance department that actually did the framing in, which is why we said we are not going to spend a lot of money knowing that this building has to come down.
Okay.
But, so Tab was very adamant, as well as I, about using, which I love our maintenance department. That we have electricians and everything that was able to come over and do that and do the framing. And then all we have to do is have like the door.
So supplies is probably.
Yes, so
what our
supplies
would be
expenses
under
were.
supplies.
Okay.
That would be in supplies.
Yeah, a little bit, that's like just, And that has also been the message when we get POs and things like that, is that, at this point, again, thank you to our communities, is that purchases are also made with understanding the fiscal responsibility that is, as Emma said, absolutely, it has to be things that can move, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll also say, I want to say thank you to our community for passing our levy. A lot of our expenses has to do with maintaining these older buildings. We spend a lot of money, a lot of supplies and contracted keeping these buildings safe for our kids. So that's a big part of our increased expenses, and you add inflation to that. So yeah, really thank you to our community so we can get new schools for our kids.
And I think that was also one of the things that was difficult for Mr. Ellsworth to also kind of reflect in here that will assist, to decrease the cost, not knowing honestly prior to the bond, like, what we were gonna have to do, that will have a huge impact as well.
Any other questions? No question? Thank you.
Next on the agenda is item number 4.01, which is our consent agenda. Board, could I have a motion to approve our consent agenda as it is presented?
Motion to approve our consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It has been moved by Mrs. Macklin and seconded by Mr. Lifford. Board, do we have any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mr. Lifford,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Abstain.
and Mrs. Turner Birch.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you, Board. Next on the agenda is the superintendent's report for item number 5.01 through item numbers 5.05. Dr. Johnson?
Thank you so much. Under the superintendent's report, I bring to you 5 recommendations. Under 5.01, I ask of your approval of the following resignation due to retirement. Under 5.02, I ask of your approval of the following service for our students that have been identified. Under 5.03, we ask of your approval of the following contract for another one of our leadership academies. Under 5.04, we ask of your approval of the following contract for us to be able to go into partnership with Bedford Heights, which we are so appreciative of. Under 5.05, we ask of your approval of the following contract with Shaker.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Board, would you like to take these individually, or do you want to do them as consent agenda?
Individually.
5.01, please, could I have a motion to approve the administrative personnel recommendation?
Motion to approve administrative personnel recommendations.
It's been moved by Ms. Akins and seconded by Mrs. Turner Birch. Any questions or discussion, Board? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mr. Lifford,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Board. Could I have a motion for 5.02 to approve the service contract as it is presented?
Motion to approve the contract as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Lifford and seconded by Mrs. Macklin. Board, do we have any discussion about 5.02?
I do have a question because I do know a couple board meetings ago, maybe it was one in October, where we already approved somebody for Leadership Academy. So is this a separate Leadership Academy?
Are you on 5.02?
Oh, yeah. It's,
5.02.
I'm ahead. Okay.
Are you thinking?
So yes, we good. I don't have no
Already approved me?
discussion. No, it's no discussion.
Roll call, please.
I amended.
Did we make a motion?
Yeah.
Yes, we did. It was Mr. Lifford and Mrs. Macklin.
Mr. Lifford,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Board. 5.03. Could I have a motion to approve those service contracts as they're presented by our Executive Director of Academic Achievement?
Motion to approve the contract as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Lifford and seconded by Mrs. Macklin. Now, Ms. Turner Birch.
Now my question stands.
Yes, this is a different one. I will share with you the goal is to actually continue adding even more. The leadership academies have our classified staff, our certificated staff, our administrative staff that join these academies to continue growing. Actually, I had a couple community members, I think, reach out to Jamie and ask, can these be opened up to our community members as well? So I have talked to these individuals as well as open up opportunities for others, because I think that would be an awesome opportunity for our community members to participate in a leadership academy.
Okay, what is this specific to this particular leadership academy? Because you said there's different ones, and once again, I'm seeing grant funded through ESSER. So it's important to have it. We can also get the breakdown of what we still have left out of ESSER as we are approving these.
I said, he can come to talk, I can't read this.
So, this Leadership Academy is with Mrs. Tracy Buckner, focused on just the advancement in leadership for our administrators, our teachers, as Dr. Johnson said, some other individuals who want to aspire just to continue to grow with leadership opportunities and exposure to that. We have other leadership that's more geared towards specifics as it relates to classroom instructional strategies. So like Dr. Erica Glover, her leadership is more geared towards the principals and then also the teachers and then the building as a whole. So those are the differences with these two. And then we also have Pastor Macon, who has his as well. I'm sorry.
We can't say that though.
That's his role.
That's his role in the community, that's his job.
Yeah, but if you partner with the school of separation of church and state, we can't use pastor as
But that's his name, his surname, but that's not his
Yeah, that's not his
job.
role with
Like,
us.
yeah, not
Right,
his
Yeah,
role.
okay,
that's not his role with
that's
us.
what I was,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's not his role with us.
Okay.
That's just what he does. So that's
Yeah.
also acknowledged.
Yeah.
Does that answer?
Yeah, and what is his leadership academy?
His was here before me.
Yeah, he's been doing this for, no, it's been like 3 or 4
Prior to me
years.
here, I just know he had one.
Well,
So that
before.
predates me.
Okay. I know we just reapproved that one then.
Yeah, because there can only be 1 year contracts. I would say prior to us having ESSER funds that came out of a different grant. Also, I want to thank the team, because they did text about the previous question, about some of our security upgrades. I'm not sure if it's the one grant that you recommended or someone else, but we received a $550,000 security grant.
Oh,
Yeah, to do all the cameras and do all that. So I thank you guys for telling me that. And then also, I'm sorry, there's so many like sources.
Also, in regards, Ms. Birch, to your 4.3 object question, it is for our membership dues and fees, our ESC contracts, the county auditor, treasurer fees, auditor expenses, and election expenses. So that comes out of, there are fees associated with the local funds that we receive. There's also fees they charge us for handling the money, so that comes out of that line as well.
But election services, I thought we can't pay out of our own funds for election services. Like,
Election expenses, the county charges us for, in our, like, we don't pay that, it's reduced in our payment that we get from the local taxes. They reduce our payment by those fees. Yep. And it's on page 20 if you wanna see more detail of it, of that packet. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Unless somebody else says something, I conclude without roll call, please.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
and Mrs. Turner Birch.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, board. We have to pay for everything. Yes, I just realized that. Item number 5.04. Can I have a motion to approve this service contract with Becker Heights as it is presented?
Motion to approve the service contract with Upper Heights as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Akins and second by Mrs. Turner Birch. Any questions?
Yes, I just wanna say that it's with sadness, that we don't have our own pool to utilize, but it's with greatness and grace and gratitude that we do have the ability to partner with a local community in order to still support our students, especially the athletes, with the use of a swimming pool. So I just wanted to make that statement go along with it.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mr. Lifford?
Yes.
And Mrs. Macklin?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, board. Of course you can.
I just want to say thank you, again to, the mayor and all of council, as this moves forward. I know that we've had this partnership for multiple years now. We've had so many issues with our pool, as well as, the impact of the pool that it had on our gym and the pipes under the floors and, everything that goes along with that. Again, in your support with us trying to be fiscally responsible as we move forward. I don't know, Tad, how much the cost would have been for us to even fix it for a little bit, knowing that we're gonna have to make some changes on that side of the building. So thank you so much, because our kids do need an opportunity to be on the swim team and things of that nature. Thanks, JC, for all the work that he did and bringing this partnership together.
Another question with that, as you stated, I know it's just for the athletes, however, it's no longer a requirement for swimming pool as a credit anymore, correct?
Correct.
So what about students, because once again, being a community that is predominantly black and brown, and that is one of the leading cause of death for black and brown children is drowning. Is there gonna be open opportunity with this connection to still offer maybe swimming lessons, whether or not you live in the city of Bedford Heights or not?
I think that'd be a question I think we would need to ask Bedford Heights Municipality regarding that. I know we've had many conversations about some partnerships that we can have, including increasing our lifeguard certification programming as well. So I think that would have to be a conversation that we would need to continue.
Is that y'all conversation or how?
Yeah, I think it's
important.
Yeah, I think that's something we can probably talk a little bit more about how that looks. But if that's a recommendation, I think from the board, that's something that JC and Mr. Brinson can take a look at and then bring information back to the board.
5.05. Can I have a motion to approve this agreement, superintendent's agreement for non-residential students?
Motion to approve the agreement as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Lifford and second by Mrs. Turner. Do we have any questions or any discussion?
I have a question on this. Is this kind of similar to senior role with this particular student? Since this is their senior year?
This is a part of a board policy that I can talk about in executive session.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Lifford?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
And Mrs. Macklin?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, board. Item number 6 is our treasurer's report. Could I please have a motion to approve our 5-year forecast for 6.01 as presented? Ms. Armstrong, did you want to say anything else?
No.
Is that enough? Could I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved by Mrs. Macklin and second by Mr. Akins. Do we have any more questions for it? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Macklin?
Yes.
Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch?
Yes.
And Mr. Lifford?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, board. And 6.02 is
And I can speak to that
Okay,
quickly.
please.
So the school rate resolution, so when we talked about the budget, we talked about the tax budget that we go in January, that's when they tell us about our levies. And basically, we're saying that we do want to use all of the funds that are levied. So we have a amendment because of the fact that our levy passed. So now they are putting that into our tax budget. So that's it. So that's what we're voting on. It's just a formality. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. It's more of a formality with the county. They just updated our tax budget, and it's a bond.
Thank you. Could I have a motion, please, to approve this resolution as it is presented? Then we'll come back with questions.
Motion to approve.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
And it's been moved by Mrs. Macklin and second by Mr. Lippert. Now, board, do we have any questions? Any discussion on this resolution?
So once again, to be clear, this is certifying the passing of the bond? Is that us saying that?
So they're adding it to our budget. So in January, they send us a list of all of our levies and bonds and what the rates are.
Right.
And so we bring that to the board and we're telling the county, yes, we want to get those funds. So they're just updating our tax budget and adding this to it for us, and then we have to just have it approved by you guys and send it back to the county.
So this doesn't go into effect until January?
Correct. And it actually, it's more of a formality because we haven't decided actually when we're gonna issue the bonds. So we will redo our budget in January and update it, when we actually do our request. And I can give you more on that, cause that's a newer process, so I can give you more information on that. Yeah, that's a whole nother session.
You will give us a day.
Oh, yeah.
Roll call.
Mrs. Boyington? Mr. Akins?
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch?
Yes.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
And Mrs. Macklin?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, board. Item number 7. It's the Board of Education old business, new business, 7.01. There's a discussion about professional development and our travel budgets. I think that was something we wanted, Mrs. Turner Birch.
Yeah, so, thank you for bringing it back, to the agenda. As to pick up from our previous discussion around the bucket of money, the $20,000 in which all of us as board members have to tap into for professional development. It was basically a discussion to see, basically, I have been attending a lot of professional development, being a legislative liaison for the district. I've attended the legislative conference in Columbus. I've attended Chicago for equity and diversity development, as well as having the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. to learn about lobbying and advocating. And then, of course, what is always done with the board every year is the state conference for professional development. So being as though that I use my space as a board member to be sure that I am educating myself and growing myself as a board member, to include the funds for this OSBA in which we just attended this past weekend, it was gonna give like an overage because according to our bylaws and policies, there is no written policy or law, rule, or anything that this board has established that has indicated that there is a certain amount of money that any individual board member can utilize. And part of that discussion was basically like, no, she can't be paid. For one, I sit on the Diversity Equity Committee for the state of OSBA. And I attended a workshop in September, which I have not been paid travel expenses reimbursement for, that I am expecting to get. On top of that, it was gonna also limit my abilities of if I was even gonna be able to attend OSBA. So prior to that meeting, OSBA registration had already been paid. It was $600. But I did not get to stay in a hotel. And basically with the completion of that conversation, which is still kind of unfair why I asked to bring it back, because basically it was stated that I would not be paid any reimbursements or anything else for my travels because it overed a kind of like what you try to give a little equality where everybody got $4,000, and because I spent over $4,000 for professional development, that $600, I think it was a negative $800 was not going to be, covered. So it is back here because there is no policy, there is no rule, there is no law that says I cannot be paid, that I still want my money from going to my travel expenses, for going to Columbus for that DEC committee. I had to participate in OSBA because once again, I sit on a diversity equity committee and we did a spotlight workshop, ran a session on that Sunday, so I needed to be present anyway. But I did not have anywhere to stay. I had to pay for parking. I had to pay for meals. There were not free meals for me because I was excluded from meals. So I'm just saying, I would like my, it was the lunch, the Alliance lunch. I was excluded from that because I showed up, they scanned my badge and told me that it was removed 2 weeks ago. So I was not able to get into the Alliance lunch. So that's why I'm here, because I want my money still.
So from Treasurer's Office perspective, the board fund is $20,000. We did email in September that we were gonna split it between the boards, so there is an appropriation to each of you guys. We each have a line item, and there is an appropriation. And so, from my perspective, if you are above that budget, I can't allocate on that line. And as you guys are a unit, and so it's not one person that can tell me how to allocate the funds. So that's where I am. Since that is what we allocated and there is no policy, in January we will review that policy and definitely, I think, set some standards. But from my perspective now, I cannot issue any additional funds to you. As far as the lunches, we can follow up on that. You were definitely on the Alliance and the Black Caucus dinner because those were previously allocated. We had your registration. And as far as refunding, I said after everything settles, if you have any funds left in your balance, we will refund you up to what doesn't put you over budget in your line.
My registration did not have the Alliance lunch on it. It had the caucus dinner, but it did not have the Alliance
It was
lunch on
separate,
it.
because it's separate, it wasn't on the registration badge.
Okay.
Like, cause you just go up and then you sign your name.
Okay, well, yeah, they said I would have to add money. But, nonetheless, it was for a conversation though, so that another person may say, hey, we can cover yours through this one. And I know the statement was said that, we're gonna leave it open. However, there is $12,000 left in this bucket of money. That a negative of six, and it's not even gonna be that because that was including the hotel stay and all of that originally, correct? And I did not have a hotel, I didn't have anywhere to stay. So, good looking back and bringing it back, I would like the will of the board to please assist me, and because I have given my time, because I have dedicated mileage and my ability to stand in the gap and be a representative, a true representative of school board leadership, that the money be allocated for me. When you sent the money, because I asked for historical data, however, I don't have the full, because I asked for up to 3 years ago. Don't have that, but just a snapshot within the last year, only $6,900 was spent in the entire board. And that was just OSBA, which was just around $1,000 per board member just to go to OSBA. Which means we are still walking away, at least in the last year, having quite a bit of money still left in that $20,000.
But I should say that that money is coming out of general fund, and as we heard our 5-year forecast, if we're not spending the money, maybe we can reduce our budget, because we do want to be responsible as well as all the other departments. So that money is general fund money. That money could be, if we're not using it, could go to the use of our children in the district itself, so.
But when you attend conferences, that is still representing children, and that is the opposite. This is not just a mixer that you just hanging out. No, this is an opportunity to learn, and it's jam-packed sessions every time.
The only thing I have to say in regards to your previous comment was, in the last previous years, they've been using different funds and grants to pay for a lot of the board members to attend different professional development. And I will get you the rest of the report. It's a little difficult because the funding was, the way that it was counted for was changed, so we have to kind of dig through the data and figure out how it was coded previous to 2 years ago. And again, there wasn't a separation prior to 2 years ago. That was something that I think was set up, was it September of '22 is when the board fund split was set up. So prior to that, it was lumped. So I have to kind of work, so it's a lot of work to get that information. So I will get that to you, but that's why I was only able to give you, I think it was a little over a year of data.
Okay, all right.
And also, I have to go back to something, because OSBA just occurred. You're talking about something before OSBA that was not paid, is that what you're saying? Why wasn't it paid? I'm just curious.
The first reason was there was no purchase order prior to.
So there was no purchase order prior to.
Right.
Just went to a PD. Where was that?
I don't know the specifics, but I think it was
It was
Columbus.
on September 11th.
Columbus,
It was
yes.
in Columbus. It was the DEC workshop. And I told them that Friday before I told Beth, I said, oh, do I need to let you know that I'm going to the workshop? Is that something that I can be reimbursed for? And she's like, we have to put a purchase order in for that. So it would be kind of like not ahead, but kind of behind, because they didn't know further in advance that I was attending. So it's not that it was on the whim, it was just the fact that I didn't know specifically that for that workshop, because that's different than conferences, that information needed to be said so far in advance. And once again, that's not something that's either stipulated either.
Well, any purchases that, especially you ask for reimbursement, that has to be a PO. It's pretty common.
It was on a Monday and I said it on a Friday. And that was on September 11th that I attended. And so yes, that's the one. I didn't even have any food or anything, it was just my mileage.
But it wasn't paid because it was, the protocol is not followed, is that what you're
It
saying?
wasn't paid because there was no PO, and we can't put a PO on until her budget falls under, so that we can put it on. So we're waiting, we're posting a couple of the transactions from other events, professional developments that Ms. Birch attend. So once those posts, after the OSBA trip, we'll know what her actual account balance is. So when we put the POs on, we put on an estimated amount. So that's how we encumber the dollars, and that's how we kind of set the money aside, and that way you don't overspend. So once that clears, and say we put it on for $500 and she only spent $300 on one of her professional developments, she might have some funds left. So that's what we're waiting to see, and if that's the case, we can put on the PO, it will be a then and now, under $3,000, so we can then process it. But again, we can't do that until we see where her balance falls.
I mean, does it have, it wasn't no vote before, like.
We're not voting now, so we she's
Yeah.
talking about it, and you're saying that you're waiting, so that's what we're waiting for.
So it was just on as a discussion, which is what you requested, so I did put that on. And that means we can move on to 7.02 if no one else has anything to say.
All right, thank you. 7.02 is our second reading and approval of the updated Board of Education policy.
I move to amend the agenda to, take off the approval and put it to a third reading, and approve on another meeting date. For approval. Just the approval. It'll be a third reading, which is what you're allowed per Robert's rules.
So,
There's a motion on the floor, we do not have a second yet, so.
right, the motion will fail if there is no second.
Just needs a second.
Two. We had the first, the second,
Order of Robert's rule says you're up to 3 readings.
still has to be second, if there's a motion, it has to be second.
Okay, is there a second to amend the agenda just for the approval?
So hearing none, that means the motion fails.
Okay, I make a motion to table it.
Is there a second? So hearing no second, then that motion will also fail. Does anyone want to make a motion for?
Well, I make a motion to reconsider certain policies and approve others at a later date in which discussion can be held. Such as, so I'm asking for, we move to approve policy three 31367, immunizations.
Second.
5337,
Second motion.
thank you. The second one is, 5337. The third one is 33.13, school calendar. Third grade guarantee, 33.10. District support organizations, public attendance at school events, transportation by school van, transportation, and student records. I'm asking that those be the ones to be approved.
Can you give us those again?
Okay, so looking at the policies that we're approving.
I need to understand exactly what the motion is. I thought the motion that was stated was about tabling, the last motion was about tabling the approval until discussion. That's what I'm seconding. I don't
That
know.
was the last one that failed.
So motion 3 was the motion to remove certain policies to approve at a later date.
Correct.
Certain ones.
That's what you just seconded.
Okay, second.
That's fine. And I just needed to know for the minutes which ones we were removing.
So we're looking at immunization, 5320.
care of students with active seizures. That's 5337. School calendar, which is 8210. Third grade reading guarantee, which is 2623.2.02. District support organizations, 9211. Public attendance at school events, 9160. Transportation by school van, which is 8650. Transportation, which is 8600. And then student records, which is 8330.
And to confirm, those are to remove or approve?
These are the ones to be approved.
To approve, okay.
Approved.
Oh, I thought you said take all those. Yeah. Okay,
No,
gotcha.
those are to be approved. The remainder would be, for a later time.
Okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion?
So the ones so that's the part of discussion, the ones that are being tabled or basically pushed for later is conflict of interest, preschool program, well, actually, I'm sorry, we can add preschool program, but I did have a conversation for that one. So preschool program can be added to what we're approving. So what's being pushed later, once again, is conflict of interest, employment of personnel for extracurricular activities, intra-district open enrollment, use of medicines, Fair Labor Standards Act, facility security and volunteers, and equivalent education outside of the school participation.
Okay.
So has it been a motion
There
and
was a
second for
motion
those,
first and
for
second.
those to be to be tabled?
Yes.
Please have a roll call.
Mrs. Turner Birch,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Abstain.
Mrs. Boynton,
No.
Mr. Akins, and then Mrs. Macklin.
No,
Okay, we can have a conversation as to why. Because now this if you say no anyway, because it's 2 abstentions, it now has to go back to a full approval anyway. Because this motion therefore,
It failed.
it fails.
Right,
The action fails.
that's right. That's the will of the board, so we need to keep moving.
Okay, so, conversation for preschool is due to, it was minor. It's just that it
We don't
says.
have a, we don't have a motion on the floor yet. Yeah.
So what do we need, Tabby?
We can make a motion to remove it, someone can make a motion to vote on it, we just need a motion made, for the next.
A motion to
Item.
consider discussion about why not approving.
I make a motion to approve the updated policies as presented.
So I have 2 motions.
But there's 2 motions on the floor. No, I just added another one right before you said something.
I'm sure that's not gonna have a second, so that's probably gonna fail. Does anybody have
Is there a second?
to that motion?
So that motion failed, and then you,
I move to approve the updated policy as presented.
There's a
you
motion
move
to approve.
it as presented.
Is there a second?
There's a motion to approve it as it's presented.
second.
It's been moved by Mr. Lippert and second by Mrs. Macklin. Now we can have a discussion.
Okay, so, preschool, it's just that it says Neola 22 was a part of the update, and it actually should be 23, right?
because all the other ones say 23. And it's X'd out as far as 2010. Then for conflict of interest, I just want to point out that the policy indicates the policy is designed to prevent placing a board member in a position where a board member's interest in the public schools and interest in their place of employment might conflict, and to avoid appearances of conflict of interest even though such conflict may not exist. Employment of personnel for co-curricular activities. It indicates an updated stating of no classified staff was taken out, but will allow support staff or individuals from the community or nearby areas. Why is classified staff not included? When as before, I'm assuming because it just X'd out that before they were included.
I can follow that up with you. I know it was discussed at the policy committee meeting that we had scheduled, but I can follow up with you and share the notes from that meeting.
Okay. The other issue of concern was the board may renew the contract of any non-licensed individual currently employed by the board for 1 or more years without, I just want some clarity on without first offering the position held by that individual to employees of the district. So is that saying that if someone who may not necessarily be employed with the district, maybe a teacher or a classified staff, support staff, as indicated above, because it does say individuals from the community can participate, is that saying that it has to be offered to an educator or somebody employed first, even though that person may hold that position before they can renew their contract?
Under Ohio Revised Code, yes. Under Ohio Revised Code for extracurriculars, as well as with the negotiated agreement, it states that you must at first offer it to a internal certificated, then an external certificated, then you can go to an internal non-certificated, external non-certificated. But once they're in that position, the board can elect that you just don't leave somebody out, that they've already held that position under contract.
Okay. So intra-district open enrollment, concern, flag. It talks about racial balance. And racial referring to minorities classified as African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, or Native American students. I believe that in our district, we also have some African students that have moved here from the continent. So therefore, if they, there's a difference between Black American, African American, and African descent diasporan. I wanted to know if that could be updated so that we are being inclusive, as we say we are, to everyone when you're talking about racial balance.
This policy was given to us as is, based on the legal guidance. So that's up to you guys if you wanna take on that liability to start changing and specifically identifying classifications outside of what has been legally provided to you.
So as Neola, so you're saying as far as Neola has given, or as that has also been in consult with the board attorney?
I am stating that Neola has provided to us the legal guidance based on the law as to what the classifications are for this policy. If you as a board decide to go beyond that and take on that liability as a board, you can so choose to do that.
So it's, just so you all also understand, as the legislative body of this district, we have the capability of updating our own policies in conjunction with our own board attorney if we feel that added verbiage can be included, whether or not liability is indicating to insurance. But we definitely have the capability of doing that, and that's part OSBA as well. So this is why I had chose to speak to these as to not approve it immediately so that we can have further review. Also, I see that the option 1 was erased or taken out. Should a concern arise regarding racial balance in one or more of the district schools, the superintendent shall consult with legal counsel. Why is that taken out? I mean, I do see, the option 2 that was chosen, is that correct? Because that's the one that has the X by it.
What appears in there is what was chosen and discussed at the board policy committee meeting.
Okay, and was this policy a part of the board, the meeting that was what, on the 27th?
Mm-hmm, the one that you told us that there was a date that you were available on that Friday?
Yes, yes. And
all those policies were on.
And it was 30 minutes?
No, it was longer than 30 minutes. You guys had those prior to, and then that was the one date that you guys had to go over it, to make sure that you went through, you had the opportunity to go through that.
And I was a little tardy to that one because of my work availability.
I totally get it.
I was not able to get on there in time to hear that one. I heard something else. I thought it was a facility. Transportation was the one that I heard about. So those were my objections to those. And then the use of medicines. I did see where it was crossed out about additionally students may administer medication or treatment to themselves if authorized in writing for their parents and or licensed health professionals. Needed to know why that one was pulled out because even the one next to it, it just says that they can carry, but it does not stipulate like the type of medication, because this is for asthma, correct? But what about, and I know it's over the counter, however, for young ladies who may need Tylenol or ibuprofen, is that related to not being able to administer the medication, or are we talking about cough and cold medication that they can bring to the school?
Are you asking if the recommendation is to permit students to administer their own medication to themselves?
Correct.
Based upon Neola and our board attorney, we would not recommend us permitting students to administer medication to themselves.
Okay. And I did want to go back and say one thing. According to Neola, when we start talking about racial, is that the composition of that organization is not reflective of other demographics. Fair Labor Standard Act, looking under reasonable break for nursing mothers, because that is so important. It says that it's only to express breast milk for a nursing child for up to 1 year. What if a mother goes 2 years? What if a mother goes 2 years? Are we only putting that on it? Why are we only stipulating 1 year?
I'm sorry, you're asking about nursing?
Yes.
Because that's the law. That has to be something also, yeah.
So is there something added if because I don't see it in here other than for adding time, for the frequency, but if a mother is nursing up to 2 years, now does that say that they're not allowed to have these breaks or the time that is necessary, the frequency, endurance, and duration, because I choose to breastfeed my child more than 1 year? Or not me in particular, but a teacher. I know it does not my government. I'm not being governor. I mean, personal, I breastfed kids for 2 years. So that's why I'm speaking from a perspective of experience and understanding that what if we had someone like this, like myself, who chooses to nurse and pump for up to 2 years, that now I'm not able to express myself?
Yes, I think that is in alignment to the new laws that have been rolled out in terms.
Are we sure on that one? Can we be to adjust that one? Or?
Well, all these are coming down the pipeline. If you guys look through the legal summary that was provided along on that first page, prior, it was in the packet, I believe, along with your policies. All these are legal updates.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only reason they're coming forward to the board.
is that we need to make sure that our policies are in alignment to the law.
Legal updates,
Like
correct.
everybody is, I mean, you can always go above and beyond
Correct.
the law, but that is making sure that we have that verbiage in there, not just, cause I think before it might have been a little bit plain in terms of.
Well, once again, why I asked to postpone so that we can get more clarity on us being able to adjust that, either saying 1 or more years or up until necessary of the mother's determination. Like, that's something that needs to be brought to the board attorney. These are those things that we as policymakers have the ability to adjust.
And we had the opportunity to do that because we were invited to that, and there are people that's on the policy committee, so those meetings were held. These questions probably could have been addressed before this time as well, if we had questions about what's coming down the pipeline. So, if we need to look at them later, we can. Are you done? 'Cause
I got
we
two.
did,
I got 2 more. The last one is, well, not the last one, but next one is facility security. When it says appropriate authorities may be contacted in the case of serious offenses. What is serious offenses? Like, that's not, it's so broad and vast in the description that, there needs some more language added to that. So then it's not so discretionary.
And is that advised by our board attorney to not specify and put you into a hold?
Okay, so it does not put it that way when it leaves it so open, because as we saw the Heskett presentation, assault, that's physical harm to a student. So do we call the police immediately on every child that gets in a fight?
So if I could just interject, so, you know, Ms. Turner Birch, we're being respectful of you, voicing concerns, but where are we going? Where are we trying to?
Well, this is why I asked that we postpone the approval for these specific ones, because I think they need some conversation, and.
But I don't think this is conversation, because the board is not really with you. And I mean, I respect you and what you're saying, and I think actually some of the concerns you're bringing up are valid, but I think what Ms. Williamson said is that we already had time to do this, and we didn't take advantage of that. So at this point, what's the aim of the presentation? Because this is not a discussion. There's no conversation happening. We're hearing you, we're listening to you respectfully, but there is no conversation because nobody else is really invested having a conversation.
Because
So
we're not invested in the policy so that we understand what's affecting our community and our students, but
we're invested in
I'll
the
yield
policy.
the rest of my time.
I didn't say
It's okay.
we're not invested in the conversation now, and that's two different things.
Okay.
Because that's what Ms.
So we'll
Williamson-
come back.
What she was saying is that investment in the policies, there were opportunities prior to now to express that investment at the committee meeting and, you know, elsewhere. At this point in time, nobody else is really invested in the conversation at the moment. So, and like I said, I respect what you're saying. I just don't see that the conversation, we're not going anywhere unless you want to state what we're trying to accomplish, and we can all decide how far we want to go. If you want to get to a point, well, yeah, if there's a motion, we should vote on the motion and decide whether we want to proceed now or if we want to move on, because again, we're a board, so we got to move together. And it doesn't appear that it's the will of the board to have this conversation now. So that, I guess, I would move that we.
No, we already have a motion on the floor, it's been second, and this is a discussion, she's done
Yeah,
the
but I mean,
discussion,
I
it's
guess I'm
time
trying
for
to
a
be,
vote.
I'm trying to
Yeah, I
be respectful
understand.
of her, and that I respect what you say, that we're hearing you out, but we're not really engaging at this point.
Can I just share, because I know that these are your policies, and I just also, Mrs. Turner Birch, want to say that, I think you already know this, that because of your policies, this is not the only time, like, I feel like if you guys are going through things and you feel like, hey, we need to revisit blah, 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 like you can always bring that back, to the like, you know what I mean, to the table. Not even just at a policy committee. So if you're going through some things, I feel like, I don't know if that's ever been said. I think sometimes, maybe the community or others might think that we have to wait until there's a first reading or a second reading, or it comes up through Neola, but because of your policies, you can always highlight and say, hey, Christine, what do you think about da-da-da? And then we amend it also. So that you're also not put into this box and we gotta do it right now, it's only 2 times a year, and so forth.
Well, to be fair, that's why I asked that we push to a third reading, which what Robert's rules allows, so that we would have more time to discuss, because.
I was just saying, in the 12 months.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, you can always do this, so even if you vote and move forward, you can always come back anytime, whenever.
Because now it's just the ones that's coming down the pipe, right?
That they were
we
legal
need to
updates.
update. These are the legal updates, so we need to update them accordingly. But we could come back if we want to amend those. I mentioned the policy meeting because we had policy meeting, and we've had these for over a month. And
No,
we could
it's only
questions.
been it was 3 weeks, because we only got the first 2, and then the first reading was just 2 weeks ago. And then I asked for them to be paper copied because it's just easier for me, and I did not receive them until Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. And then we had a conference, and so I used my weekends to, do research or whatever is needed. I don't have time during the week to do that, so I was asking for more time to have these conversations, and I only was able to attend 1 policy meeting, and I was only there for like 50% of the time.
Well, since we have already made a motion and it's been second, and we do know that we can make some amendments to it, could we have roll call, please?
Mr. Lippert,
To approve.
It's to approve,
All of them.
what's written.
To approve
Yes.
what's written.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch,
Yes. No, I'm sorry. No. I'm in my yes.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you, Board. Item number 8.01. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please? I'm sorry, Board, before I adjourn the meeting, do we have anything else that we want to mention?
Well, I guess I'll mention the Hollyball again, which is December 1st. $60 per person, and I still have the tickets, the raffle tickets, if anybody want one, at $5 or 6 for $20 off. So that's all I got to say. I motion to join the meeting,
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Macklin and second by Mr. Lifford. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Macklin,
Yes.
Mr. Lippert,
Yes.
Mrs. Boynton,
Yes.
Mr. Akins,
Yes.
Mrs. Turner Birch.
Yes.